Right, what I'd like to do in this video is, I know God exists, but I've thought about this, and the Bible is written either by humans or by God, inspired by God, and nobody seems to be taking that on board, that it was written. Atheists in general, and people that don't believe, just believe it's a bunch of made up stories, and the people of the church believe it to be inspired by God. I don't believe anybody's sort of challenged the Bible in such a way for its authenticity of whether it has actually been written by a human or whether it's been written by God. There must be something in the Bible that, in my opinion, proves or disproves who wrote it. Possibly in all the Bible. And the authenticity of whether humans wrote it and whether God inspired it would be, for instance, little things in the Bible that probably people don't think about. For instance, his fleece shall be washed as white as snow. In that continent, at the time when that part of the Bible was written, would they have known what snow was? So God would have known what snow was, but if it was a human writing it, then they wouldn't have known what snow was, because they would never have seen it or even know the word that existed. And for instance, was there places written about that couldn't possibly have been written about by a human? For instance, the travelling times from one place to another, the sort of people that the stories were about, or was it fiction or was it fact? Is it fact and fiction? Did somebody write factual based things and make things up inside of it? I mean, Pontius Pilate, he existed, and the Egyptians, they exist, and all the places written about in the Bible actually exist. So these stories, if you like, if they've been written by humans, there would be tells as to whether God wrote it or inspired it, or whether humans wrote it. Now, this kind of challenges the Bible. It's a little bit exciting in a way. I'm not going to say why I think it's exciting in a way, but if the Bible is proven or disproven, you can imagine where the world will go in 100 years or 200 years. I mean, if this becomes like a global thing where people are going, yeah, was the Bible written by, was it inspired by God, or was it written by humans? And if historians and people that have got that kind of intelligence to read the Bible and know about things that were written in the past. For instance, I mean, the Adam and Eve story, did they exist? So you've got a story there of the beginning of the Bible that was about Adam and Eve that you could say was not real. They didn't exist, but somebody wrote a story about fiction, then, if you like. Yet the story of Jesus Christ is a story of a man that walked about. So from the perspective of an author would have had to have gained this knowledge, if it be fact, to be able to put it into a story. So they at least must have been there, because nobody recollects conversations between one person and another. If you're out and about and a story is told, they don't sit there and go, well, such and such said this and such said this, and these questions are asked, them questions are asked. So if you look at the depths of how an author wrote the Bible, they would have had the questions and the answers to the questions. So they would have had to, as an author, think of a question and add the question, or the question came from people that were actually talking. So people that don't believe in God or believe that the Bible is inspired by God, they believe these to be the stories that came across continents, and that it kind of doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't, because it's kind of impossible. But not only that, a Bible seems to be the foundation of buildings that exist. Just for a phrase, it says in the Bible, the character, obviously this is a character or a person that existed. He said, I will be known from the least to the greatest. So the author went, my character will be known from the least to the greatest, and I will put that down. So think of the people in the Bible as characters. Do your own study on it if you like, but I'm kind of looking at the scholars of people who know the Bible because of proving and disproving whether God inspired it or not. Now, I know God exists. I don't need the Bible to tell me that God exists. How to live in the world we live in and things like that. But there are people out there at the minute trying to sort of disprove that the Bible is authentic, and they're saying this and the other, and like, you know, there's lots of things you can look at in the Bible that could say whether it's authentic in the way that it must have been written by somebody beyond this earth or inspired by somebody beyond this earth. Because if you're looking at the world as God would, you would see things from a perspective of, you could see one side of the planet and the other. So writing about stories from one side of the planet to the other would not be hard for God to do that. But for the travelling times, for instance, for somebody to write a story in Asia, Spain, all these countries are written in the Bible. Would they have known? Would they have understood each other's dialect then, that they would have been able to write the stories of that continent? There's lots of questions you can ask, even ones that I've not come up with, but by knowing more about what you read in the Bible, there must be a scope to know whether the Bible was written without a doubt by humans or written and inspired by God. So this is part of my channel. I've got more to come, but this really is the focal point of this. This really is like my gateway video to you to say, you know, this is sort of a contention, really, if you like, between the church or people that believe in the Bible and atheists and people that don't believe, because you've got one side that are going to go and try and prove that the Bible was written by humans, and then the other side have really got to go, well, we've now got to prove that it was inspired by God, because if they go ahead and prove that the Bible was written by humans without a reasonable doubt, and we don't contend that, then 100, 200 years, 300 years, 1,000 years in the future, the Bible will be pretty obsolete, because nobody will believe. Nobody will believe in God whatsoever, on the basis that, well, it was proven that the Bible was written by humans and God didn't inspire it. But you know, this is the way some things go. So it could be proven or disproven whether God wrote or inspired the Bible or not. I'll do another video on something else.